Okay, so this is what got the previous owner to think it was Joseph Smith. Not that it was printed in New York and that was near Joseph Smith III. He never mentioned that. He didn't know that. He was enamored, thinking, and a lot of curiosity about, the Hyrum and Thummim, because he's into stuff like that and still. So I don't know. It's just people who are not members of the church that are interested in him are going to be more interested in things like that. But he did state that he thought he looked like Joseph Smith's son, so that was about it. He never did comparisons with the death mask. It never got anywhere. 2009, but he thought it looked like the son. So I'm going to show you the different photos. I do see, as I talked about in the facial analysis, that on the death mask, and in my picture, this guy and Joseph Smith Jr. and his death mask has pretty straight eyebrows. I would say Joseph Smith III inherited his father's eyebrows, whereas they look a little bit lighter there and a little bit lighter there, and here they look a little bit thicker. He's younger. A lot of different things can affect your eyebrows other than shaving them yourself or plucking them. You never know. We're getting the other theories. Maybe some of them got pulled out. Maybe they did a couple versions of the death mask and whatever. But this is him at different ages. I definitely don't think his nose exactly matches the death mask of Joseph Smith or my guy's picture. Mouth a little bit, but the ears are sticking out. And they're, I would say, if my picture is Joseph Smith and that's his father, I would say like his father. But he's attached earlobes, as someone was really, really digging into. And someone that was arguing with me a long time ago. But Emma had attached earlobes. I wouldn't say my carte de visite has attached earlobes, but I don't know. But, if he has a beard in every single one of these, but I think the general face shape is just a lot longer. And the face shape is a lot longer in my picture. But he has brown eyes. Emma had brown eyes. I mean, to me, it's very obvious this is not someone with blue eyes, even though it's black and white. So I look at every single one of these pictures. These are very dark eyes. And Emma had darker complexion and darker hair and darker eyes. Just much more olive, which, everyone said she was just strikingly beautiful. And in quite a contrast from Joseph, who had just a little bit lighter skin, lighter eyes, lighter hair. And she just had a much, much more darker hair. Anyway, yeah, just some similarities. Frederick, a church historian decided that they would authenticate this as him. I don't know what I think about that. I've never cared to analyze it fully. I'm just sort of leery, but we do know that this is Fred, because it was in Julie Murdoch Smith's photo album that you can click on above and read the history. So he died very young, so I think that's why we only have one carte de visite. Again, he died in the 1860s, is an 1860s carte de visite. Sometimes they printed it off a huge, much bigger piece of paper. You can see all the sons. Apparently that's David and that's Alexander. I don't know about that. But I do think that's Fred, and I do think that's Joseph Smith III, and then that's their stepfather. So when they talk about Bibbins, he helped out in some way, and so he made a deal with him so he made some money off of the photos of the painting, and was going to sell photos though, and so I want to find that letter. Or they had a photo album. He was talking about a photo album when Emma died. But he inherited everything that was Emma's. And he's not a member of any church, I don't think. And they're in Illinois. They're not in Utah. So that's just, and at that, he died. He ended up being institutionalized. And the two of them ended up the last few years in Missouri. And so again, a photo album talking about Missouri, they did end up there. Alex, a little bit different history with him. I mean, he only was married to one woman. Joseph III didn't live plural marriage, but his wives died quite a few times. So I think his wife just lived quite a long time, and he had a lot of kids with her. And I've met, and so I've communicated with some descendants of Alexander. And so that's a very faint, and that was just kind of what I was thinking, like these earlier, but it's not a saltwater print, but sometimes they were pretty faint, some of these carte de visites. And that was probably an original, so. But Alex, his eyebrows definitely look a lot thinner. But he does seem to have lighter eyes. His nose looks very small to me. It looks more like Emma's nose, and his ears don't stick out. And he has a beard and mustache here. It's a lot more clean shaven, and he sort of has that stronger chin, but they both, their chins don't seem to protrude as much as my picture. But people have said that he looks quite similar to his dad, and I would say the eyelids, having a little bit more of a hooded eyelid, and his eyes are lighter, apparently more like his dad's. I just don't know. But here I do side by side here, and I think when you can see a little bit more of that profile, you see, one thing I did notice was his nose sort of coming out where it starts to protrude, like the nasal bone. I did see a similarity between these two pictures, and of course this more hooded eyelid. But his eyes were set deep in his head is what people were saying in description of them, and possibly the lips. Ears are not protruding, but the rest of the son's ears did protrude. They were just larger ears. And then David Hyrum Smith was born November 1844. He is biological last son of Joseph Smith. I mean, they're alleged to be children, one child from a plural wife, but they just haven't found him yet, or the baby didn't live. We just don't know. Like, we really don't know. It's just his cousins heard him talk about that happening. Anyway, but really high forehead. He's got those eyebrows that look similar to the death mask in my picture, and the ears in the mouth. But I see with a lot of the sons, they're you'd have to see more of the profiles of Joseph Smith and his mom. I think he gets his mom's nose. I mean, his nose was larger, but the tip of his nose was a little bit higher, whereas this seemed a little bit lower, which I think was a lot of them seeing pictures of the Hale family, but Emma's nose, I just think the tip of her nose went down a little bit lower. And that's here, you just don't see his nostrils as well, if that makes sense. But that's a drawing of him as a little kid. So you just really, and so I think this is going to be my last video. And so a descendant through Alexander. So Alexander was Joseph and Emma's third born son that lived to adulthood. So just to give you a quick history, if you don't know, they lost a son named Alvin in 1827. In 1831, they lost twins, Emma premature, lost twins that were born premature, and then she adopted two twins. One of the twins was killed during the mobbing, and then Joseph Smith the third was born after the mobbing in November, I think 1832. And then after that, you've got, I think, Frederick, Alexander, and really almost every 2 years, Emma was pregnant. And so she had those three sons in a row that were fine and healthy. And then after Alexander, she had Don Carlos. Don Carlos died at age 1. And then she had another stillborn. And then she had David Hyrum Smith. It was just the life back then. Just really hard for children to survive. And I kind of wonder, if she had some health problems or something like that. But I've theorized about that before, and I won't say that in this video. But, I mean, obviously, she's just had some problems physically. We just don't know. They didn't have ultrasounds back then. They do today. So this is the grandson of Joseph Smith. So he's the son of Alexander. Arthur Marion, born 1880. Okay. I don't know a ton about him. I just do know that someone contacted me that was related. I won't say who, but they could see some similarities. And I do see some similarities between this guy and his ears, his nose, mouth, and hairline to my picture. Eyebrows are a little bit thinner. They're just sort of really thin and thickening out on the side. But you really see those ears. And then if you think you can tell if someone has ears that stick out slightly from the profile, you can't really. Again, my ears stick out. I have pictures of me from the side and just forward, but his ears stuck out a little bit. Chin, hairline. And then the sisters, they all were quite a bit older when we see pictures of them. So she was a younger sister, 1813. Catherine, Sophronia, we don't have any pictures of her. Sam died. There could be a picture out there, and we just don't know it's him, And Hyrum died, Joseph died, but again, there could be a photo of Hyrum, and we just don't know that that's Hyrum. Could happen. But we do know that this is Catherine, and we do know this is Lucy. There was a picture of William, but I just saw no similarity. Sorry. I'm just being honest. But we have photos of William. So basically photos of Catherine, Lucy, and William, the siblings. And so they all were younger. But almost all of their photos are older. So William, he's a lot older too. But Catherine's quite a bit older. But I do see the ears. William's ears didn't really stick out. But you don't really see her mouth. I think she's lost some teeth. She lived to be, I think, 80s. She lived a long time. She was very healthy. So I think it was awesome she made it. But I do notice, like, possibly her eyebrows are similar to Hyrum's. Maybe just genetically they had really light eyebrows. Maybe the same with Lucy. I think she was in her 60s. I heard that she looks really good for her 60s, but when I read and researched this, I think one person said that she was in her 60s, so it would have been like 1880s to 1821. But the ears stick out a little bit, and I see a little bit in the eyes. I think you don't see her nostrils, well, if that makes sense. So I think her nose is a little bit more like Hyrum's. Hyrum's nose the tip of his nose was a little bit more down. Whereas I think her nose would more match my picture and possibly Joseph's nose. But again, she's probably about 80 at this point. So that's about it. And then if you want to see more about the Bibbins family, I thought it was important to kind of show this. So you can see, here's that 1850, where I was explaining the Bibbins connection. They're Elisha Bibbins from New York, but then all their children were born in Pennsylvania. Wives from Connecticut, New York, clergyman, Methodist minister, knew Emma Smith. So there you see Alice, 58, and then you do see in that 1860, 10 years later, it's that Alice. And this Elisha Bibbins died in his 50s, visiting his parishioners, going from Illinois to Pennsylvania. He had a heart attack when he was, and his wife was with him, but he died in Pennsylvania near Scranton, which lines up with so this is where I just didn't want to go deeply into this except going here. And so this is a county records. And I don't know if you want to think this is legit or not. I think it is. But these are the pioneers of Kendall County. And you can go down and just see the Bibbins, Joseph Slocum, J.S., Reverend Elisha is born in Pennsylvania, but he died in Plano. So that's where Joseph Smith III had lived. So that's just evidence he would go there. He wasn't against going there. And very well, Joseph III was in Newark in 1860, according to his journal entry. It's what it sounds like. It's very close to there, because you can see all these children were born in Pennsylvania. And it just shows, like, son of Elisha and Alice. It's that website you can click on. Then here's this website. So again, my old website, it was just a different name. They changed the name of the website. But here's Elisha Bibbins. You can find a lot of information. So this is basically the same thing, but this is where you're getting, and a lot of these are actually quotes from books and things that I could find online at one point and just can't anymore. So it just, pros and cons of the internet. But they do talk about all of the children. You know, Joseph Bibbins, 28 in 1850. So I mean, yeah, he was an adult when Joseph Smith died. But it's not until 1860 that he talks about being a photographer. So I just don't know. But this talks about the whole family. Let's see what's important. Talking about Kendall County. He was a part of the Illinois state legislature. So kind of some people that I have talked to that have been positive. I won't say what they said. That's up to them. But that could be more motivation if someone has access to maybe the Journal of Elisha or the Journal of J.S. Bibbins. I don't know. You know, so I do have some excitement for people to just kind of give their point of view on my photo, which will hopefully happen. But I'm excited to see, you know, if something gets out there and more public and more people know, and if they care, it might give people, you know, that have access to things I don't have access to, that might care and contact me and say, hey, I found this, found that. And so there are things to find out for sure. And you also just have, I already talked about that, just sort of showing the same thing about Elisha Bibbins, knowing the Hale family, circuit rider, Elisha Bibbins. So then you're comparing that, you know, his age is right because he's married and having children around that time. And this is, he leaves, you know, according to these Methodist books that I found online. Around 1814, he's leaving more western, where Emma was, Pennsylvania, and then going towards Scranton, where he ended up dying. But he had proselyted and had children and then took his whole family to Illinois. So this is the point where it's getting boring, I'm sorry. And so this, if you want to read everything, you can see his sources. And actually, I think you need to click on his actual article. This is the Descendants of Joseph Smith's website. Got that link. And then you can just find all this information about him working as a circuit rider for the Methodist Church. And some of these names are kind of confusing, but you have to figure out, okay, this is the Tioga Circuit. That did include Susquehanna County and Valley, and then Harmony, Pennsylvania is not called Harmony, Pennsylvania anymore. So some of this is quite confusing if you're really trying to dig into the Bibbins family. But Mark Staker understood it and concluded that's a lot of these were his actual references from his book. So you can just read his 100-page article. And so this is sort of just going straight into this, and then you can just look up. Some of my links aren't going to direct pages. Some of them will. What was the point of that one? That's the Tioga Circuit. Oh, explains that is part of the Susquehanna. That's why that's there. Anyway, the Endless Mountain Home is where Mark Staker talks about Harmony, 1812, you know. And so the one that birthed J.S. Bibbins, whose oldest brother was born like just a few years after this, you know. This is, the ages line up, like locations. I just couldn't find another Elisha Bibbins that ended up in Newark, that gave birth to J.S. Bibbins, that was not this Elisha Bibbins that knew Emma Smith. It's around 1814, 1815 is when he starts having children, and He's still in Pennsylvania, he's just in a different part, and he's a traveling Methodist minister. So I'm just kind of showing you a lot more of these links. Just what I could find. So showing 1814, showing that he's just on a different circuit. But probably because he got married and just wanted to live over there. Life changed, and then that's when a different, traveling minister ended up in Susquehanna County. Yeah. What was I finding here? And then you can go here. Again, on that link, going back to the Kendall, again, this is not an LDS, it's not a blog. It really is Kendall County, just getting any records, and which is amazing. Like, my county doesn't have records compiled on a website from the years that I need information from, To me, this is cool and it's exciting. I know this is kind of boring. And at this point, I've been talking for hours. And I'm doing basically a marathon of making videos, talking about my entire website. So I'm really tired at this point, so I'm sorry if I'm really spacey. But I've read through all these, and it's confusing because the names of the counties, so you just have to research. That's why I have so many links on here. Like, again, Harmony is not called Harmony anymore. So that's why Mark Staker writes a 100-page paper, I guess. I don't know. Because there's so much information about that area to know about, and he found it out, which is interesting. But this was an interesting point. So Joseph III doesn't move there to 1866. And so this was an interesting point about the sun stamps. So a lot of Bibbins photography shows a stamp on the back because they had to between 1864 and 66. So that means that my picture wasn't taken, but it could have in between those times, but it could have been like late 1866. So that's why I'm pushing more towards earlier, or it could be later. And so that was something I think Weaver told me about. But anyway, he just could have they both have the hyphen JS, and they both have famous fathers that I think they knew of each other. I think they talked about each other, I think at least. Because I think he would have talked about Joseph's wife, Emma, in a nearby town. And Methodist ministers were visiting Nauvoo, and so they don't name who they are in his journals, but I'm like, I wonder, and it sounds like he got along with a specific Methodist minister that was, to me, sounds like the same personality of Elisha, but that's just, I didn't put that on here because that's just reaching with a theory here, but it's just total opinion. But he just was playing games and having a jumping contest with some Methodist minister. I just don't know. But he was outside of Millington, but across the Fox River, which makes me wonder, did he go from Sandwich 4 miles and then cross the Fox River and then was 2 miles from Millington? So maybe he just kept going? Because that's where his uncle went. George A. went to Newark. And he's saying, my uncle went there and proselyted. So, and if he's looking at papers and things, he would have known Newark. But yeah, a run-in. So I'm just showing all the different census records. That's from the first page. So then you see Alice is several years older. It's 10 years later. Now she's 69, and he's naming his son Elisha. So his father's Elisha. And then you've got this July recorded Elisha Bibbins, the one that knew Emma, passed away visiting friends in Scranton. That's a little more East Pennsylvania. But he was a part of the Wyoming Conference, which is Western Pennsylvania, where Harmony is. It included Susquehanna Valley, where Emma was taught. So anyway, this is from the newspaper. There we go. So this is the obituary for Elisha Bibbins from newspapers.com. Saying, he was 65 in 1859 of Illinois. So he came from Illinois and died in Pennsylvania. And was a member of the Wyoming Conference, which the Wyoming Conference included where Emma lived. died suddenly at the residence of Dr. Peck Scranton. This video is going to be a lot longer. He died while sitting in his chair, having just written a letter to his wife, who was temporarily in Orwell. So they were traveling from Illinois, and his remains were carried to the later place. Universally beloved and respected in all of Illinois, basically. He's basically a famous minister, famous religious leader, at least in that area, to a lot of people. And then Joseph Smith was also famous. They both have the hyphens JS. They're near each other for 16 years. I mean, how could they not want to talk to each other if they find each other? You're JS, I'm JS, you know? There's just too many talking points, you know? To be that close to each other and not hear about each other. The provenance is strong. Anyway, I just go back into everything. This is just all a lot more thorough. So I didn't know for several months about there being a presidential campaign. So there's that link. I've talked about that before. I kind of reiterate a few things. How there was a conference, and so Joseph Smith III says he's in an area where George A. Smith was proselyting. He was there proselyting in Newark. So I don't know if Joseph Smith Jr. went there. Old videos, I say maybe he had his photo taken because J.S. Bibbins was an adult. But it's an 1860s card to visit, so it was the 1860s. And, census records are what you can look at on Ancestry. If you doubt me in any way, you can look up J.S. Bibbins, born 1821 in Pennsylvania, but just put in Newark, Kendall County, Illinois. So there was a branch of members in Newark, Kendall, near Chicago. But I just sort of say, as I'm starting just to understand the history, a lot of these people that became a part of the organized church, I think they would have gone to Utah if they were persecuted, but I think they were just several hundred miles away from Nauvoo, still in Illinois, but they didn't have very much motivation to leave. So they stayed, because a lot of them would tell Joseph Smith III, hey, your dad did live it, plural marriage, but they still thought he was a good guy. They didn't hate him. But anyway, 1882, I just quote again, 1860, October. That's where he's southeast of Illinois, located on the Fox River, a few miles from Millington. So which few miles from Millington? If he's in Newark, he's just 2 miles from Millington, and he is in the region that George A. Smith. According to this is where George A. Smith was proselyting and campaigning. But they had a conference with all of these members, and this, I think, was his area. He was proselyting. This is Kendall County for sure. Whatever he's talking about, whatever area in his journal. Again, you can't find this online. This is, you have to get the book and go to page 80 and 82 of the Memoirs of President Joseph Smith III. This video was 30 minutes, and now I've been talking for, it's coming out to 3-4 hours that I've been talking and doing a marathon of just reading and explaining what's on my website, aside from the vlogging where all my videos are. So I'm doing several short videos. This one's going to be long. But it just is. It has to be. Anyway, have a good day.